Hi everybody, welcome to Facebook Live. Rick Lupert here. I just released 3 brand new books of poetry. You might have tuned in last week when my book Professor Clown on Parade, we had our publication reading for that. When I say we, I mean me alone in my house with a book. Thank you for tuning into that. If you missed that reading, don't worry. You can tune into it live right here. Sorry, you've seen those videos online where people point and then a link magically appears. I guess you can't do that when you're alive. I assumed my fingers would be able to cause that to happen, but I guess it didn't. But that's okay. The video from last week's reading is on my website. Not on my website. Well, it is on my website in the video section, but if you scroll down on my timeline, you can see it there. But this week, I am going to be reading from my book, Romancing the Blarney Stone, which is all poems written in Ireland. And last week, if you watched the video, you probably saw that there was kind of a wood paneling in the background, and that kind of simulated a Vermont cabin of sorts. Because that book, Professor Clown on Parade, was written in Vermont, Maine, and Connecticut. And yes, that's correct, Richard. Have yourself a cup. And this week, I have painted my entire Van Nuys studio green in solidarity with the country of Ireland, because all the poems in this book were written in Ireland. I've done a couple of other things. I also had a complete blood transfusion from Lupert blood to leprechaun blood. And also, just for the purposes of this broadcast, to read poems that I wrote in Ireland, I converted from Judaism to leprechaun-Catholicism, which is a real thing. So there you go. So I am going to be reading poems from my new book. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just leaning down to pick up my book. I'm still here. So there you go. Romancing the Blarney Stone. One of 3 brand. Oh, I forgot. This is there's some technology available to me now that wasn't available last week because for whatever reason Facebook Live shows these videos in reverse. Facebook Live has a special device you can buy to unreverse your videos, and it's $600, but it seemed kind of worth it, so I just thought I would utilize it. Here you go. So, yeah, this is all poems written in Ireland, and I'm gonna read a bunch of them. Yes. That is a very good. No one caught the raven last week, Ruth. That is a raven right there. There because you can't necessarily read poetry live unless there's a raven statue also with you in the video. Also, I have a bottle of Bushmills Black here. This is a proper Irish whiskey, and I'll refer to it again when we read the poem about whiskey. Thank you, Rose. So nice to see you here. I painted the studio green just to read poems from Ireland. So there you go. All right, moving on. I'm going to read some poems from this book. We always start out these trips by flying to the East Coast and dropping our son off somewhere. If you remember from last week, we flew to Allentown, Pennsylvania first, and we left our son there. Not just randomly. His grandparents live there, so we left them with him. It's not to worry. On this trip, we flew to Syracuse, New York first, where my family lives, and we left our son there. And then we went to Ireland. So these first few poems actually are written on the way to Syracuse. This is called Somewhere Over Canada. It is 7:30 in the morning, and my eyes are staging a revolution of closing hours. I message Brendan to ask if he is awake, with a quick follow-up telling him I am not. They will not hold planes for tired people. So if you wish to go to a place that is different from the place you are in, you will need to defer to the schedules of others. Behind me, they discuss the size of water bottles. This is a topic I have nothing to add to. They say this flight is non-stop, but I can't imagine any other kind. All right. Also written on the plane, this poem is called Haiku. See if you can spot the natural image in the poem, which makes it an official haiku. I'm pretty sure there's quinoa on my chin all the way to Chicago. Did you see it? I've got one more poem for the plane. Gabe says he likes it better when I read it drunk. That's the Late Show, Gabe. You'll have to catch that later. This poem, the book is called Romancing the Blarney Stone. This poem, again written on the plane, is called Romancing the Blarney Stone, which makes it the title poem of the book. Somewhere in this universe, in this solar system, on this planet, on another continent, in a country surrounded by water, in a town there, in a castle there is a stone, a known stone, a kissed stone, a stone kissed by more men and women than Caligula. My lips destined for this stone, in that place, in all the places that I mentioned. My lips, that stone, you'll see. All right, well, all of these poems in the book are not written on a plane. We actually arrived in Syracuse, New York, and here are a few poems written in that town, home of my ancestors. This first one is called Lesson Learned. Apparently, even without a SIM card, cell phones can call 911. I learn at 2 in the morning after trying an internet-found trick to make our Europe phone work. So the 3 Syracuse police officers tell me. They also want to know how much longer I'll be in town. Richard, I'm not going to answer that question, or even acknowledge that you asked it. One more poem written in Syracuse. No, 2 more poems written in Syracuse. I'm just learning how to count. No, 3 more. I'm sorry, I skipped all these pages. I'm sorry, I was just thinking of donkeys. This is actually a fairly serious one. My mom passed away the year before we went on this trip, and it was my intention to bring her back to Syracuse for that to be her final resting place. And this is about that. This is called Cemetery. Gophers are taking over the cemetery where my grandparents are buried. We have to avoid falling in their holes. Gregory cleans the headstones of our grandparents with a brush he had in the car for this kind of occasion. He is prepared for any kind of occasion. We open the box and return my mother to her parents. It looks like her father gets a little more. Daddy's little girl. The rain will finish the job of bringing them back together. We say words, Jewish words and other words. Not everyone wants to say words. We put stones on the headstones. The white sand of my mother, now a blanket to her mother and father, return to where she began. That was for you, Mom. All right, this next poem, also written in Syracuse, is called Meownifest Destiny. At my cousin's house in Chittenango, a cat comes to sleep with me. How is it that cats know exactly what to do and who to do it with? That cat will come to your bed in the middle of the night and lick your nose. Actually, I'm sorry, that cat passed away last year. Oh, I didn't mean to get your hopes up. If you need help finding a cat to lick your nose, let me know. Thank you, Rose. Thank you. This is the last poem I wrote in Syracuse, and then we head off to Ireland because the book, after all, was written mostly in Ireland. This is called Junior High School Reunion. Everyone in DeWitt Wegmans is someone I could have gone to junior high school with. I want to have a reunion so bad, but I haven't seen them since 1982, and I have no way of knowing who they are. I want to put a sign around my neck that says, "Hello, I am Rick Lupert from Syracuse. I live in California now. Please identify yourselves. I want to reminisce about the past. I want to give you a hug." It feels like a lot to put on a sign, and by the time I figure this out, I'm already waiting in the Syracuse airport for a plane to Dublin. Actually, it's a plane to Philadelphia, but I'd rather not get into the details. Oh, friends from another life, wherever you are, whatever you look like, we'll have to plan ahead next time. And so we flew away from Syracuse, New York to Philadelphia, and then got on another plane and flew to Dublin. And now I will read to you some poems that were actually written in Ireland, which is the theme of this book, since it's called Romancing the Blarney Stone. Poems written in Ireland. Are you ready? This is, we landed in Ireland. Speaking of green, the reason why I thought it was so important to have green in this publication reading is because if you've ever been to Ireland, when you land, if you fly into Dublin, surrounding the airport, there is nothing but these amazing green fields, which are the greenest goddamn thing you've ever seen. It's kind of like if you ever see green outside of Ireland, we're just trying our best to copy what they have in Ireland, where the real thing is, you know? So there you go. That's green. This is one of the first poems I wrote in Ireland. This is called Not Iceland. The boy in Dublin wearing the shirt that said Iceland is one of the first things we see. We're not falling for that again. One of the first things we did in Ireland, and mind you, you take a red eye into town, so you're exhausted and you're in another country, but you arrive in the morning, so you've got the entire day to try to stay awake wandering around a foreign country. So naturally, after checking into the hotel and eating some food, we went right to the Leprechaun Museum. And this is called In the Leprechaun Museum. Because of my participatory nature, the tour guide has declared me her favorite. She instructs us not to leave the giant's room until she comes and gets us. We are left in the giant's room for a long time. It's how the Irish diminish the cockiness of its tourists. They say most leprechauns live with their mothers for hundreds of years, which is why you never see female ones. But where did the mothers come from, I ask you? Leprechauns are a third the size of humans. Humans are a third the size of giants. I personally fit somewhere between leprechauns and humans. That's about how I'm short. We pass through a rainbow which feels like a bunch of colored strings hanging from the ceiling, but it does end with a pot of gold. They say the leprechauns are the accountants of the fairies. I wonder who their lawyers are. There's a whole lot about fairies on the Leprechaun tour, and you don't even have to pay extra for it. People unexpectedly throw money in the pot of gold room, even though they specifically have a wishing well room later on. Human beings will throw money into any hole they encounter. You know it's true. The man in the store at the Leprechaun Museum apologizes for the sunny weather, says Irishmen are wandering about in shorts, says no one should have to see an Irishman's knees. All poems written in the Leprechaun Museum. We finished that day, and this is where the whiskey comes in. Naturally, after essentially 2 days of not sleeping, we decided it would be a good idea to go to the Whiskey Museum and get an education about whiskey and a tour there and to sample different kinds of whiskey. Naturally, this is Bushmills Black. It's a premium version of Bushmills, which is in the Northern Ireland's whiskey. If you're in Southern Ireland, or as they call it there, Ireland, odds are you're just going to have Jameson whiskey, and the battle goes on. This is called Notes from the Irish Whiskey Museum. 1. Whiskabitha is Gaelic for water of life. The first word became whiskey. 2. According to apocryphal monks who lived hundreds of years ago, what whiskey can't cure can't be cured. 3. 12 people died during the Dublin whiskey volcano, which led to a fire which was abated by rings of horse manure. Guess what they died from? Drinking dirty street whiskey. 4. I hiccup during the whiskey tasting, which causes the docent to give me special attention. He's already singled me out with a warning to not drink dirty whiskey from the street. I wish I were making that up. There you go, poems from the Irish Whiskey Museum in Dublin. Come on over. I will be more than happy to give you some of this Bushmills Black Irish whiskey. Or mix you up some Calcanon. Look it up. It's good. This is at the end, I think, of the first night of Dublin. This is called Show Yourself Dublin. Robert O'Sullivan Schleif, thank you so much. You tune in whenever you can, and thanks for being here now. Yes, Amber, it's true. It is true. It's all fun and games until someone breaks out the dirty whiskey, at which point it's just fun. All right, this is called Show Yourself Dublin. 2 days without sleep. Our feet have quit their jobs. Potatoes of every kind inside of us. At least 3 kinds of whiskey. Dublin is a city like other cities. They pick up the trash. They erect their spires. They move you from one room to the other if you don't like the smell. There are 3 more days to come out of your shell, Dublin. Wake us up. Shine for us. People have been telling us not to kiss the stone, but we've come all this way. I feel like we're going to kiss the stone. We can no longer see the river from our hotel window. Sort of a sad story. We got to this really nice hotel, and it smelled like pee-pee. So they were nice enough to move us to another room, to a suite, which was a bigger room, but it no longer had a view of the river. Heavy, serious problem in the world today are problems like that. Another little poem from Dublin. This is called We Pass by the Super Dry Store. Everything just seemed kind of regular dry. This one is called Sleeping La Vida Loca. It is the end of the day, but revelers outside of our hotel room are living la vida. Sorry, that was a burp. Not written into the book, but now forever a part of this live video. I'm going to start again. It is the end of the day, but revelers outside our hotel room are living la vida loca. We think it's a barbecue the hotel is putting on, but our feet don't want to hear it. I've spent a half hour, that's an exaggeration, with a hairdryer pointed at my shoe. Tomorrow it's heavy art, and I'm not talking about lifting, and a book so old no one has touched it for years. I'm going to adjust the temperature in our room, or not. We're told everyone learns Irish, but hardly anyone speaks it. All the road signs are in English and Gaelic, though. In case I wasn't clear, Irish is Gaelic. Maybe the temperature is all right. It is after midnight here, and other times on other continents where people we know are in the throes of their day. Our day has been thrown. It is sailing through the air. It is about to land. It may have already landed. This is all the thud. Pour me some Slims. I don't know what that is, Fred. I can't pour you that. I've got Bushmills in the room, and that's it. If you want that, you can. I don't Slims. I can't even read that. All right, moving on. 119. That's the page number, not just, I haven't, it's not a seizure or anything. This poem is called Rowan an Tailteann. The sign in Irish says Rowan an Tailteann. Translated, it says Department of the Tailteann, which thankfully cleared it up for me. Another poem about walking around Ireland. This is called I Keep Getting Irish Stuff on Me. First, the puddle of something spilled, maybe a shake or who knows, bled right through my shoe, had to wash it out at the hotel, spent a half hour with the hairdryer, then melted wax poured off the table at the tapas place, also landed on the same shoe, didn't notice till later when I saw it, panicked, thinking it was something less wholesome than dried wax. Then something on my forearm, probably from leaning against a wall on the tour. I'd describe it to you, but you'd probably stop reading. Or listening, in the case of the Facebook live video, which you're all watching right now live. Unless you're watching it in the future in the posted video version. See how I just traveled through time? All right, moving along. I've got a couple more poems from this part of Dublin, and then we move to other parts of the country. This poem is called Finbar. Finbar is the name of a guy. We went on the Irish Writers Pub Tour, where you go to different pubs led by actors who act out scenes from famous Irish writers and then tell you about the things that are related to these writers in these pubs. It's really, really cool. And then you drink in the pubs, which was also part of the appeal of the tour. Finbar was the guy who led us on this tour. If you're watching, Finbar, hi. It's Richard Dreyfuss. We hang out with Finbar, the guide, after the tour. He is 28 years old, or in that ballpark, and has a beard like an evil Moses. He's a cat guy, which diffuses that a bit. He is classic Finbar, and we are not at all jealous that he gets free pints at every pub. He laughs like an Irishman, refers to me kindly as Richard Dreyfuss, leaves to bring a pizza to his girlfriend. What does he do when he's not leading a tour? Sleep, he says, which is exactly what we go back to our hotel and do. Sleep. Alrighty. This is the last poem, one of the last poems I wrote during this first part of the trip in Dublin. It's called Dublin. Dublin, you city of writers, you city of Vikings and rebels, your failed revolutions, your fairies, your leprechauns. We'd walk the streets with a Guinness in one hand and a Jameson in the other, if it were allowed. You're the kind of people who would storm a biscuit house until it was allowed. You were unseasonably warm, hiding your rain from the Americans so it won't embarrass you. We'd talk about your weather fondly, Dublin. We'll cross your river. We'll eat your brown bread. Dublin, show us your naked Germans, your rock and roll, your Trinity, your old and new, your buildings built on Vikings. Show us where you kiss the sea. Well, we left Dublin and headed to Northern Ireland for one night, and we spent some time in Belfast and places around there. So I'm going to read a few poems from that part of the trip. This first one is called All Men Must Die. Oh, actually, no, I'm not going to read that one first. Sorry, I should have rehearsed this. This one is called Loyalist Bonfire. One of the wildest things, you probably know all about the conflict in Ireland, Northern Ireland versus Ireland, which was at a heated fire in the 20th century with all kinds of explosions and fighting and the IRA and all that kind of stuff. All of this stemmed from a conflict which began in the 1600s, which pretty much never stopped going on, a conflict between Catholics and Protestants. And nowhere is that conflict more evident than in Northern Ireland, in Belfast in particular, where there's kind of a peace that exists, but there's a lot of evidence of the very recent conflict. And all of this, again, is the same conflict that's been going on since the 1600s. So this one is called Loyalist Bonfire. Wooden pallets wrapped in green, white, and orange. KAC written on the fabric. Kill all Catholics. Effigies of the Pope and Virgin Mary statue with face chiseled off, set on fire on the 12th of July to provide maximum insult. Unlike the sensibility of removed Confederate flags, the Protestant Northern Irish say, it's what we do here, and it's not going to change. This poem was written in the heart of the city of Belfast. It's called There's a Pizza Place in Belfast called Big Caesar's. Oh, it's on. This is the last poem I wrote in the city of Belfast that I'm going to read to you. Actually, there's a whole lot of poems written in Belfast. It's kind of a thick book. I'm only reading some of the poems from the book. We're getting towards the end. This is called Location, also written in the city of Belfast. There's a sign dead center in the middle of town that says, Visit Belfast. I feel this is not the best place for this sign. And now I'm going to read that poem which I said I was going to read 3 poems ago. One of the cool things about Northern Ireland, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, is that Game of Thrones is made in the studios in Belfast, Ireland, and there are many sites all over Northern Ireland where it's filmed, where a lot of it is filmed. It's filmed in other places. So this is for that. It's called All Men Must Die. 1. I'm at the point where, while traveling about Northern Ireland, I want to behead myself to demonstrate my Game of Thrones fanmanship. P.S. Fanmanship is now a word. 2. I head into the bathroom at the Fullerton Arms in Ballantoy for my own Game of Thrones. Well, we left Northern Ireland and had one last night in Dublin, and before we finished off the trip with a couple of nights on the West Coast. This is the last poem from Dublin. This is called One Last Stroll Through Dublin. I get so nostalgic about places I just met. Temple Bar, like a Quartier Latin, turned up all the way. Trinity College, somehow we toured you 3 times. I want to enroll and then never go to classes. O'Connell Street, we tried our best to avoid you, but you cut through the city like an elephant in the room. Molly Malone, fictitious but every woman's story. Oh, Molly, people climb on you like they paid for you. Oh, Guinness and Jameson, have you two met? In every pub you commingle like distant cousins. Oh, Liffey, what city could be mentioned without its lifeblood river? Los Angeles doesn't count. It's hardly a city. It's a cacophony of neighborhoods without a center. We're not in love with you, Dublin, but we'd come out for a walk and a pint every week. We'd be your close friend. We could trade babysitting. If you bring your kids, I hope we meet again. The distance is so inconvenient, but let's keep in touch. You never know. The Vikings may come to California, and we'll need a place to go. Oh, water of life. Oh, fiery red hair. Salante. There you go. That's all the poems written on the east coast of Ireland. I've just got a handful left written on the rest of our trip. This first one, we drove to the Blarney Stone, which I did kiss. And then we drove into a city called Limerick, where I completely failed to write a limerick. And I wrote a few poems in the city of Limerick. Cute little town. They got a castle there and some good food. Here's a poem written in the city of Limerick. It's called The First Thing I Notice in Limerick. My wife is gluten-free and dairy-free, but not at all beautiful-free. That was for you, honey. This poem, not particularly related to the location, but you go through many titles when you yes, you did, Addie. I watched, and thank you for watching. You go through a lot of title choices when you're coming up with a book, and when you've written a book, I should say, you come up with a lot of titles. Of course, I settled on Romancing the Blarney Stone, very much related to that last poem. This poem, however, is called Another Rejected Title for This Book. Feck! That was another rejected title for this book. We're coming to the end. I think I just have 3 poems left to read. Thank you guys so much for watching this, whether you're watching it now or watching it later. We took a couple of day trips. Sorry, we took a couple of hours of a trip during a single day I'll give you time to make a diagram to help you understand what I just said. To the Cliffs of Moher, which is an extraordinarily beautiful site on the west coast of Ireland. This is called At the Cliffs of Moher. See if you can spot the Jewish reference in it. It comes early on in the poem. At the Cliffs of Moher. So pleased they are not named the Cliffs of Moyle. I assume it is a beautiful day here underneath these clouds and fog. The majesty of these precipices shuts me right up, which, if you've been reading or listening, you know is necessary. The weather is fogging with us, but eventually lifts and we can see them. Cliffs for giants. Last step before a long swim to Philadelphia. Ireland doesn't want us to see home, shows us these magnificent beauties to convince us to stay. Even the cheese plate in the cafe works like a magnet on me. This cheese probably made from cows within 10 miles of these cliffs, maybe from the milk of the cows we passed. This is one of the places on the long list of 8th wonders of the world. Well, Cliffs of Moher, you've got our vote. Tell me where to sign my name. Sorry, I have to return to America tomorrow, but you've turned my eyes Irish. I hope they see you again. At the Cliffs of Moher. It was amazing. We had to drive on the left side of the road from the right side of the car, which was frightening. And once we got off the highway, leaving the Cliffs of Moher on the way back to Limerick, we were on this two-way street in which on both sides of the car, tall grass was touching the car. I think it actually woke up Addie because the window was slightly open and it brushed across her. So there you go. You should drive in Ireland. This is the last poem written in Ireland that I'm going to share with you. And then I've got one more poem for this whole darn thing. This is actually a conversation between Addie and me, which I wrote in a pub in Limerick, Ireland, when we were really so full from our trip and really not exactly ready to leave the experience of being alone together on a vacation and not ready to leave this beautiful country. This is called Ready. Are you ready to go to the airport? No, to go back to the room. Are you ready? I don't ever want to leave this room. Then you're not ready. You'll have to buy the book to see which one of us said which thing. All right, I've got one more poem to read to you from this book. So we left Ireland, sadly, and we flew back to Allentown, Pennsylvania, again via Philadelphia, I'm sure. And we had a full day there, and I think I got to spend some time on my own, so I wandered around to a couple of museums in Allentown and in the city of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I wrote this while sitting in the Blue Sky Cafe, which is an awesome cafe in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania that I've had the good fortune to go to a few times. This is called Blue Sky. Good idea, Richard. Drive using the mirror. I didn't have the mirror at the time. Addie says, I miss those cows. Me too. We should get a cow is what you're saying, right? We should get cows? We'll get some cows. We'll talk about it when you get home. Once again, this is called Blue Sky. I'm sitting in the blue sky in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, with an Ireland hangover and a Lehigh Valley cup of coffee. Addie tells me she's going to share a bowl with her mom. She means Chipotle, and I have no business thinking anything else. I've got pills laid out in front of me, at least one vitamin and a red one which is supposed to make my pain go away. The screaming baby doesn't help. The clinking of every plate in the restaurant. The fans above, everyone going like a lazy tornado. Who needs weather indoors? The waiter thinks I'm an idiot for not seeing the half and half on the table in front of me. The radio sings about a girl who dances in the sand half the world away. That's where I was yesterday, half the world away. I'm going to sit here sipping coffee until my headache goes away. Then I'll leave this room with paintings hanging on its walls to go to another building with the word museum in its name. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was poems from my book, Romancing the Blarney Stone, here live from Van Nuys. Last week, of course, that book, 1995 on still here, Amazon, on Amazon California, also Amazon everywhere else in the world. Last week, of course, I read from my book, Professor Clown on Parade. Also, 1995 on Amazon. Don't get scared by these prices because I'm leading up to something. On January 5th, which is 2 weeks from today at 3:30, I hope at 3:30 Pacific time, I'm going to be reading poems from my book, Donut Famine. Donut Famine is all poems written in New Orleans, in and on the way to New Orleans, and which is a really fun place. So since last week for Vermont, we had kind of like the wood paneling, like a Vermont cabin, and since this week we've got the green, painted the Van Nuys Studio green for Ireland. Next week, in the spirit of, in 2 weeks I should say, in the spirit of Mardi Gras for New Orleans, I think I'm going to do the whole reading nude. I'm going to have to run that by my wife and the neighborhood council first, but it's the plan. Anyway, so there's those 3 books. They're all $19.95 each on Amazon. I've also, don't go anywhere. Don't be scared about these prices. I've also got this new spoken word CD called, whoa, there it is, Rick Lupert Live and Dead. 25 tracks, half of them are live tracks from readings, the other half are studio tracks mixed with music. So cool, you'll love it. That's $15 on its own. So I'm no mathemacologist, but if you add all those together, basically 20, 20, and 20, and 15, that's $75. I've never even seen $75 in the same place in my life. So I understand that that's a large amount of money. But on my website, not on Amazon, you can get all of those things. All 3 books. I had to count my fingers to make sure there were 3, because that is 4 and that's not correct. Oh, but then you add in the CD. My finger knew what to do before I did. All 4 of those things, a $75 value, including shipping within the United States. Sorry, Finbar. For just $50. You can only buy that on my website. It's right there. I will ship it out to you personally. I will sign them for you if you ask me to. I will put my elbow on a book and tell you which book my elbow touched. Whatever you want, it's all there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Amber, you should bring your bathtub to more readings in Hedgesville. I think that's really the solution to having this experience more. Good to know. Good to know. So back in 2 weeks, January 5th, with a reading from Donut Famine. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you missed any of this video, you can tune in just by clicking something, and then you can see, I don't even know. Ireland, everyone. Salante. Whiskabitha.